Hey everybody, this is Carl back again for another X-Men review. And we're covering one X-Men comic for now, today. Uh Colossus. And there's this highly recommended uh uh 5-issue run starring Colossus called Bloodline. It's written by David Hine and art by Jorge Lucas or George Lucas. I'm pretty sure it's Jorge Lucas. Yeah, I was planning on reviewing Colossus and his sister Elena, aka Magic, right after this, but I'm gonna have to wait like another day to do a Elena comic later on this week. And of course, Colossus, big dude, metal powers, but we'll get further in depth really quick. Peter Rasputin has the powers of metal mimicry. Colossus is a mutant with the power to convert the tissues of his entire body, including his bones and eyeballs, into an organic metal substance that appears to be analogous to osmium and to carbon steel. He is able to transform into this armor-like state at will. The process is instantaneous and remain in that form for as of yet undetermined amount of time. The longest known he's remained consciously armored by choice is 5 days straight. Speed and endurance are greatly enhanced. The strength greatly enhanced. But the drawback is that he has to be constantly aware to transform. If he's knocked unconscious, he automatically reverts back to his fleshy bits. But he also cannot partially transform. Like, he cannot just turn his arms metal and the rest of his body is normal. It's either entirely metal or not. He has superhuman strength. Is strong enough to hold back the Juggernaut for a few potent blows. He can strength is like on a class of 100. So he's able to stalemate Ben Grimm in an arm wrestling contest. He is able to go to blows with the Hulk and Gladiator. So even though he loses to Juggernaut, Hulk, and Gladiator, but that's like an extended period. The longer that they come to blows, he can like at least hold his own for quite a bit. This goes to show his level of power. Superhuman stamina, durability. He's able to withstand 110 millimeter howitzer shell bullets. He's able to withstand 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So so he's pretty like durable, obviously, and he can run at the speed up to between 32 to 36 miles per hour. He's a skilled artist, speaks Russian and English. He's an expert combatant in judo and wrestling, and his weaknesses, and only two primary things that can actually penetrate his metal skin, is vibranium and adamantium. Anything else, not it's not making a dent. Yes, like I said, he's a skilled painter. He's one of the most iconic artists in comic book history. So This is the lowdown on the Colossus's power set, in case you're not totally familiar with it. Also, if you haven't already, please follow me in the links in the description below. My YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. Follow me on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/talkativecarl, where I live stream lots of video games. I just finished up Jedi Survivor, so you can watch the complete walkthrough up on the YouTube channel at this point. Check out my Patreon, where you subscribers can make a choice between 3 tier listings on what you think I should review, or just a general topic that you want me to talk about. And of course, my Twitter and Instagram, all links in the description below. And I'm very close to reaching the goal, my 400 subscriber goal. 14 subscribers away. So once again, I'm just bring it up every once in a while, if in case you're new to the spot. I will do a Hot Ones challenge video in celebration of the 400 subscriber milestone. I'll put a post on YouTube and Twitter on what questions you guys want to ask me. I'll choose a set of 10 out of that bunch as I try out each of the hot sauces that you've seen from the Hot Ones show, and answer said questions and give you guys a shout out as well. So yeah, 14 subscribers away, so close. Crossing my fingers here. I really want to try it out for you guys. Anywho, yeah, Colossus. Yeah, this was around 2011 when this volume came out, and this probably around the time where Elena is start dead, because in the past she died of the legacy virus. It's one of those pandemic things that affected the mutant population, and Colossus' sister got it and she died, but she later came back. But this is part of a period where she's actually dead, and Colossus is dating Kitty Pryde at this point. Currently in the comics, I don't think they're actually together anymore. I really wanted to do like a Shadow Cat kind of comic, but there's no Kitty Pryde comic for some reason after all these years. Not that I can find. At this point, Emma Frost is with Cyclops. I don't know if Jean Grey is dead as well or just consumed by the Phoenix. I'm not sure but this is where the stage of the game is in this point in time. Colossus wakes up from a nightmare played, by, dreams of his past, but, something's awakening in him. He bursts through his own bedroom wall and out in the grounds of the Xavier Institute. Shadowcat, Emma Frost, and Cyclops and Wolverine come check up on him, and everybody's wondering like what's going on. And of course, it's probably around the time when, because Emma Frost in the past has been known to, it's kind of like Mystique, walk that line between good and evil, but currently right now she's, well, I want to say she's like good, like altruistic, but she's not malevolent as she used to be. Let's put it that way. So of course she always had a thing for Cyclops. I forgot which event I was reading this. I don't know if it was the Marvel's Judgment event. I'm pretty sure it was that, where I was reading a line where Emma Frost had like a poster of Captain America and Spider-Man in her room or something like that. Because how like like a thing where there are girls who have like a thing for bad boys. Well, I guess when it comes to women on who walk that edge, like Emma Frost. I guess you can say it's like the polar opposite for her. She has a thing for good guys, where like very morally upstanding dudes, and she had like a thing for guys like that. That's why she had like a like she really get like she casts the vapors every time she sees like Captain America and Spider-Man. So I thought it was like a funny little thing. I always thought that was pretty funny. Like, oh, that is a neat little thing to add into like Emma Frost's little background. That she has like a thing for good boys. So that's why she's with Cyclops. She had like a thing for Cyclops. And of course, like Kitty Pryde, this is probably early phases when she's like in the mixing in with the X-Men and shacking up at the Xavier Institute, even to the point of being in the same bedroom as Cyclops. And Kitty Pryde at this point makes it very obvious that there's still animosity towards Emma Frost, because she used to be a part of the Hellfire Club, ran by also the evil mutant Sebastian Shaw. So Peter, or Peter, I pronounce it. It's like I said, it's played by Nightmares, and he's been painting this big not like a mural, but it's like this big big canvas. And of course he's keeping it covered because he doesn't want nobody to see it, because it's painting what he's like, because he's looking at a mirror of himself and he's trying to paint himself, and he's painting what he sees in himself. And it seems like at the end of the first issue, it looks like something out of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of situation, which frightens Shadowcat, who later sees it. But Emma comes in with a message for Peter, saying that he got a message from his cousin about what's going on, about like something happening in Russia that he needs to go. Why is that? Well, here we are. This pale figure comes to meet this family, and he ends up supposedly healing their son. It ends up killing this like late teens, early 20s kid. Kind of like touches him and pretty much set him on fire. So he so there's like a mystery afoot. So as Peter is gearing up, trying to get everything they needs and head off to Russia, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself with these slides, but his cousin, I'm blanking on her name that fast. Larissa is a reporter, and she's like trying to she's like the Lois Lane here. She's trying to find out some dirt on the supposed like is about some corruption that is happening in Russia. And of course her boss is like, okay, like it's dangerous, but try to get the scoop and we'll see what we can do about it. So Eurissa, because this being Russia, they gotta worry about like KGB and all these other like black ops kind of dudes. And so she had a friend of hers dress up as her and leave out, and just to draw out any possible undercover dudes and see if like who possibly be following her. Then all of a sudden the Pale Man shows up, not only kills the undercover guy who was telling her, but also thinking it's Larissa, kills her best friend. That's why she ends up calling Peter, because now she's, it's not like a supposed thing with this corruption that she's dealing with. It's something deeper, because these particular MO is happening, for the past few months. And she called Peter because it turns out that these people, aside from, like the cop, everybody else has a connection with Peter and Yarissa in their familial bloodline. So now they go further back into their familiar lineage. They discover that they're direct descendants of Gregory Rasputin, the infamous, I don't even call him like a cult leader, but like, it's like, what do you even call Rasputin? Because he wasn't like the leader of the Russians or anything like that. Some kind of Russian mystic or self-proclaimed holy man. So, infamous dude who's like, kind of like a terror back in the day. And he had, like 12 like his concubines, pretty much. And one of which is their great grandmother, Elena, who was Romani, I believe. Her and her brother. It was just those two. And she got involved with him, and therefore had his kid, which that son eventually had sire descendants, who desired descendants, which eventually came down to a handful of people, including Peter and Yarissa being the current generation. So after all the killings going on, there's only 3 of them left, which the third one happens to be their Uncle Vlad, who's living like a hermit, out in like Siberia somewhere. So now they have to take a train to try to find him, to protect him for this mysterious killer. All of a sudden, as they're about to leave, 2 mysterious dudes try to get Larissa's attention. Colossus, freaking out, thinking it's like another assassination attempt. He just jumps into action, metals up, and then tackles these guys. Ends up breaking one of the guy's ribs, at least one of his ribs, and turns out they're just police officers. So they end up calling the ambulance, but they have to hightail out of there because they can't sit and waste time with answering questions. But on a train ride to their destination, Peter just like apologizing profusely, like, I didn't mean to do that. I'm normally not like that. And Peter is well known to be such like a big teddy bear. It's very rarely, it's like you see in the Deadpool movies. Very rarely he like really shows any, bouts of anger. He's usually like a very soft-spoken kind of guy. But Yarissa theorizes that because of who Rasputin was, because of his bloodline, each one of his descendants carried on like a part of his a certain part of his traits, bouts of depression, suicide, anger, manic depression, self-loathing, all these stuff. Like, you know, each one of them felt at least one aspect of one of these things. Yarissa, in her case, you see like she actually tried to unalive herself because she has like cut marks on her arms, while Peter, you know, ends up like tends to get into like a burst of rage, you know, depending on how far he's pushed. So with Peter comes to himself like, you know, wow, that explains a lot of, you know, me attacking my own friends and doing certain things that on normal circumstances I would never do. It's just like I just go in like a blood rage. When they eventually make it to their Uncle Vlad's little shack, they're met up by the Pale Man, who turns out to be Mr. Sinister, and Mikhail. If you've been following my good thing, it's a good thing I actually did read Storm's mini series, because Mikhail happens to be like the main villain in that arc, even though that story, you know, sucked. And by the way, while I'm speaking on the subject, check out all my X-Men related reviews that I've done so far. There's more coming. I just want to take care of like individual, you know, iconic X-Men characters before I eventually do the X-Men teams with iconic moments in X-Men stories. You know, like the first team up, and then like Onslaught, Days of Future Past, House of M, and then House of X and Powers of X to wrap it all up. And of course the movies and TV shows too. So Mikhail, we learned that he has immune ability to teleport to, you know, a different place, open up portals to get to one place to another, but also teleport to alternate, like a empty space dimension if he wants to. Sinister starts to explain to everybody how everybody got to this point. Now, of course, if you're not familiar on Mr. Sinister, aka Nathaniel Essex history, he is a scientist. He was born. He would have been like, because he met Charles Darwin when Darwin was, you know, relatively in his elderly age, and Nathaniel was like, let's say he was like a man in his early 40s. So around like the 1800s, it was around that time where he probably would have been born. And he loved science, and he loved the concept of evolution and mutations and everything like that. He constantly had like debates with Charles Darwin on the subject of evolution, while Darwin thinks like evolution has to come in increments over time. Essex could not accept the fact that it takes that long to produce certain effects with certain evolution and mutation. He wanted to speed up the process, basically playing God with it. So after failed situations, even tried to experiment on his own kid, his baby, which ends up, you know, dying, and his, you know, love of his life, you know, left him at that time. He eventually found Apocalypse, resurrected him, and he in turn changed him to Mr. Sinister, so he can continue on with his work. Because, matter of fact, just scratched a bump. Let me go over what, because there is a Mr. Sinister comic book miniseries, but it's long after the House of X, Powers of X thing. I'm trying to keep in the, you know, like these single stories prior to that. Just avoid certain spoilers in case you're not too familiar with like the whole House of X, Powers of X situation. Uh, Second. Oh, there you go. Finally, sorry. Um. Okay, genetic enhancements using the mutant DNA. Thanks to alteration by Apocalypse. Endopathy. Endopathy. Mr. Sinister possesses the ability to control every molecule of his body, enabling via the implanted X gene taken from the biomolecular metamorph courier. This allows him to deviate his own genetic structure in a slew of incredible ways in a similar, albeit weaker matter to his former master Apocalypse. Cellular shape-shifting, regenerative healing factor, superhuman physical condition, like superhuman strength, durability, reflexes, stamina, speed, telepathy, mind link, illusion, telepathic blast, detection, shield, mind control, possession, mind alteration, mental amnesia, astral projection, delayed power, ability to mentally paralyze a foe he's touching, and ability to psionically turn off the powers of any mutant, creating a mental block. Telekinesis, genius level intellect, master surgeon, geneticist, skilled mechanical engineer, master manipulator, trained combatant. So yeah, that's pretty much like, what we get with Nathaniel Essex. So after sealing away Apocalypse, after he come to realize, thinking that they share the same goals, Apocalypse is more variation of what Mr. Sinister wants to do, is a little bit more barbaric to Nathaniel's liking. So he sealed Apocalypse away and continued on with his will mess around with the X gene, or in his case the SX gene, where he manipulated certain humans, which he later defined, because after so many failed experiments, one managed to carry on successfully throughout time, which later trickled down to who we know to be Grigory Rasputin. Grigory Rasputin, who they're kind of playing off about what we know about him in real life and attributing that to what Mr. Sinister probably did to Rasputin's ancestor a long time ago. And so when Sinister meets up with Rasputin, he let him know about what his plans are, what he did, how he came to be, and he suggested to Rasputin that he should find some healthy women, pass on his seed, so that way he can run experiments and just to essentially a scientist. He wants to see like the progression in his eyes of the mutant genome and see how the way he can manipulate it, so forth. And of course, Rasputin, well known to be like get people in his thrall. I guess he got that kind of gift of gab, or just that sway over people, and it seemingly had Elena under that kind of sway, and she sired a child with him. She was pregnant with his child. while he was, telling the story, Vlad, who at this point gone completely bonkers, because that mania he probably got from Rasputin's part of his DNA, starts pouring gasoline over himself, set himself on fire, and then Colossus had to grab him, take him out in the middle of the snow, put him out, but it was too late. He died. So now it's only Mikhail, Larissa, and Colossus. They come to realize that after Elena's brother, I forgot what his name is, Victor or something like that. He loved his sister, and he's seen that how Mr. Sinister and Rasputin is poisoning her mind, and he went to authorities to try to put an end to Rasputin and his ill-begotten gains. Of course, they try and do everything they can to kill this dude, but he just won't die. I mean, eventually, after several attempts, but he managed to crawl away and go to Mr. Sinister, and eventually gather all his pregnant paramours, and they performed this kind of ritual. Even Mr. Sinister couldn't fully understand this because he's a man of science, not a man of magic. But this little mystic ritual where before he succumbed to his mortal wounds, Rasputin had pieces of his soul just go to each of the pregnant women. And so since the jig was up, Mr. Sinister decided I gotta check on each of his descendants, because he's still experimenting, even though some were stillborns and they didn't make it after birth, but there was still like at least a handful that did manage to survive, and he checks up on them over time, and either some succumb to madness or whatever situation in life that they come to, eventually trickle down to the current day of who was left. And he at first wouldn't really waste time checking in on somebody like Vladimir, who's pretty much really kind of like went off the deep end, until Rasputin came through him and spoke through him and said, it's I'm happy to see you again after all this time, Nathaniel. And of course this kind of startles Mr. Sinister, like, Rasputin? It's like, yeah, it's me. Come to realize this ritual was a way to preserve him until the time was right to eventually, once his bloodline, wherever current day that's going on, starts to whittle down until there's only one, which will allow let's say it was 12 descendants in his current timeline. Some die natural causes, others self-inflicted, other by Mr. Sinister. Each time one gets bumped off, the remaining three, his soul splits into the remainders, which allow him to grow stronger. That's why these bouts of depression or rage or whatever gets a bit stronger. Even every time one of them dies, when the finite of them gets smaller, they feel like that kind of impact in their brains that Rasputin's is knocking on the door. And that's what his plan was. That's why he's working with Sinister to finally get him back to life, and so they can continue on with their work that they started so long ago. And is Mr. Sinister's kind of like hope that it'll come down to either Colossus or Mikhail, because they're the ones with power already, because they're mutants. So Nathaniel ends up killing Urissa, which completely angers Colossus for obvious reasons, and he starts attacking Mrs. Sinister right away. Of course, he gets stopped by Mikhail. But I just want to take the moment to bring up how, like, this story seems more like a period piece mixed with like a mystery. There's like not that much action involved, which I don't mind honestly, but it's just like it's Colossus, and I kind of half hoping to see Colossus, really utilizing his power set a little bit more, or going to fisticuffs a little bit more. Not that that equates to good a comic, but it's just that I don't know. It's like having like a Wolverine comic, and he doesn't like he rarely cuts anything up. It's not like a downer because it's not that kind of story, but it's just like, wow, I expected a lot more from my Colossus story with that, but it's still like a good mystery. The art in this is kind of basic. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. It's suitable for what is being kind of depicted and told. It kind of reminds me, what it reminds me of? It's just a certain pencil shade away from being those kind of art you see from the Hellboy comics. I did do a spoiler review for a few Hellboy comics in one go last Halloween, which you can check up on the YouTube channel. But yeah, this is got like very Hellboy kind of art style vibes. I was just maybe like a shade or two away from it, but it is kind of basic. This art is kind of basic, so I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. So Mikhail uses his powers to transport him and his brother, because they're brothers, into this alternate, empty dimension. Now, since there's only two left, and Mr. Sinister kind of prefers Mikhail because he would be a little bit more into this than Colossus would be. You want to know how he found Mikhail? Well, Mikhail was actually contemplating unaliving himself in this different blank universe, where this kind of black hole where you'll still be alive, but just no way out of it. And he was contemplating just throwing himself in there. But that's where like the whispers of Rasputin called out to him, so that's why he went back to the earthly plane, and Mr. Sinister found him, and they kind of teamed up there. Because Mikhail has been known to, in the past, to be very power hungry. So a fight ensues in this dimension between Mikhail and Peter, and Colossus has like a moment with the upper hand where he's very Cain and Abel, about to bash his brother's head in with a big rock, but he decided not to because he's still his brother, and it's like they're the only two family they have left in their bloodlines now, so he just can't bring himself to just snuff it out. And on top of that, he doesn't want to be possessed by Rasputin. So Mikhail took the opportunity to seize the moment and leaves Peter in his void, because he can't bring himself to kill his own brother either. But he's not. But he just like, in lieu of that, okay, fine. I'm not going to take your life. I'm just going to leave you here, and you'll just die of starvation eventually. Might take 2 weeks, might take 3 weeks, but at the most, 3 weeks, you will constantly be known that you will know you die once Rasputin takes over. So Sinister is just reveling in this moment right now. So like uh Colossus isn't right away dead. He points out to Mikhail and say, like, you know what, I rated 60 years. I could wait a few minutes, from a few moments longer, so there's no rush. So we'll know the deed is done once Rasputin takes over your body. So as Mr. Sinister is saying, like, okay, let's get out of here, but Mikhail's like, hold on 1 minute, I need to bury my cousin. And Mr. Sinister is like, what? What do you mean? Like forget her. Like she, like, you know, that's weakness. That's what you're talking about right now is his weakness. Your great grandmother wouldn't allow this kind of stuff. And Mikhail said, like, so much you know about my family. He goes to bury his cousin, and he remarks to Mr. Sinister about the necklace that Mr. Sinister noticed that Elena used to wear back in the day. And Mikhail points out that, because Mr. Sinister points out, like, oh, your great grandmother wasn't plagued by such weaknesses. When push came to shove, she knew her bread was butter, and killed her own brother. And of course, Mikhail pointed out that what Mr. Sinister did not know is that when he was a young boy, he saw his great grandmother on her deathbed and was visited by this mysterious man who wore the same necklace. Turned out to be her brother, who pretended she killed, because despite her relationship with Rasputin and whatever's been going on between them, and whatever ritual or whatever, she will not bring to herself to take her own brother's life. She refused to do that to her own brother. And so he points out to Mr. Sinister, like, you don't love anything. Like, he starts recalling the time where, because Larissa brings it up earlier, that when Mikhail and Colossus were young boys, Colossus, very Batman Begins, fell in his hole deep and dark, and that's why kind of I'm surprised he doesn't have like claustrophobia like Storm. But he's calling out for help, and he was looking for hours until Mikhail found him, and he reached in and pulled his brother out of that darkness. And he remarks to Sinister, it's like, you never loved anything or anyone ever, have you? It's like, did you even have friends? Like, nobody ever loved you? It's like, how can you just be this level of cold-heartedness? So he decides to go back to the alternate dimension and pull his brother out of it, and tells him, like, you didn't think I would actually leave you in this darkness, did you? And these two brothers hug. And this is probably my favorite moment, because it's like Colossus, like, thought he's going to be, going to literally die here. His brother left him here to die, and he's sitting there, like, on the ground, just bawling his eyes out. I mean, it's like, this understandably he would be that level of sad. He's like, you think like, oh, big strong Russian man, and like, it's like, you can't show weakness and blah blah blah. No, I completely understand. Like, thinking like, oh, I'm literally trapped here by myself, gonna starve to death, and here come my brother reaching out through the darkness and pulling me into the light. And then they both start, wrecking like Mr. Sinister shit. And it was really, really good. And so Mr. Sinister slinks away, and Mikhail decides that, well, we cannot allow Rasputin to resurrect. So uh so what I'm gonna do is what I was gonna do previously. And I'm gonna hop into this void where I won't die. Uh uh I won't die, but I will never be able to get out again. So therefore, Mr. Sinister will have no reason to try to track you down or anything like that. And if something ever happens to you and Rasputin uh finally resurrects in me, he will have no way out. So the world will be safe from him. And he before he says his final goodbyes to Colossus, he leaves him with this: have children, Peter, have plenty of children, and so they will have children, and therefore the bloodline of Rasputin will further spread once again, and therefore there was no chance of him trying to resurrect back up again. So that's what ends up happening. And like I said, he's very few times you actually see Colossus actually flexing some muscles and using his power. Sure, it's not as showy as, like, you know, optic blast or, you know, kinetic cards, but it's still pretty dope. And just to see Mr. Sinister get his, you know, shit wrecked is always a plus. So, and they use the, you know, battle, you know, like, you know, action parts properly here. It's very spaced out and it happens very little, but when they need to happen, as brief as it is, it's still pretty dope. So I obviously, like, in current comics, let me see, like in current comics, if like Mikhail ever came back in current comics. One second. Okay. While examining the corpses of the Xeno enhanced soldiers, cerebral sword motor and Kid Omega with it, and use it by to access for a gateway to Russia. Deliver the sword to Rasputin. 10%. Yeah, so yeah, he's currently alive. So a lot of things changed up with the new status quo with House of X and Powers of X kind of thing. So after this adventure was over, Peter returns home. At this point, distraught, having lost, he's the last. I mean, obviously, Yelena eventually pops back up, and then eventually his brother pops back up years later. But in this point in time in this 2011 comic, Peter is left distraught, thinking like, "Oh my God, like I'm alone. Like I'm my last line in my family, at least until eventually I have kids of my own. Like I'm the last of my bloodline." So it kind of ends on like a bit of a sour note. Like, oh yes, Mr. Sinister his plans has been ruined, but you know, the cost at the cost of losing his cousin and his brother and uncle. So that was Colossus Bloodline. So I mean, it's really good. Like I said, but the writing is really good. The art, is basic. Is it's not as bad as something like what I saw in Storm or the Beast solo miniseries. But like I said, it's very mid. I think it fits with the narrative that's being told, but it's just like it really gone south at a certain. It could have gone south, but it's like very basic. But anyway, what do you think of Colossus as an X-Men member? Is it your favorite? Because I'm glad we get to see, something with Colossus. It's probably like the best one I've seen. There's other stuff with Colossus in it, but as far as I saw, it's not as good as this. So I want to just talk about this one. But I will see you guys in a few minutes where I cover X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's been a long time since I saw that movie, but I know a lot of things have been said about it, but I want to speak my piece on it. So look forward to that. And I'll see you all in a little bit. Oh, and after that, I will cover season 3 of 90s X-Men TV series. So look forward to that. Anyway, I will see you all soon. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe to Talkative Carl on YouTube, Twitch. And yes, once again, check out my Patreon as well. And I'll see you all in a little bit. Peace.